Hey viewers, this is Random Stuff with Alex Hughes, and today I'll add to the positive journals again. And I think I'll talk about this idea of life after anxiety. What I mean to say is that, a couple years ago, or a few years ago now, I was going through a very tough time with anxiety, a lot of panic attacks. It was like it was a war, inside my brain. All these really kind of negative emotions were trying to beat me down, and somehow I think through the grace of faith and believing in myself and doing what I needed to do in order to get out, I was able to have the most amazing year of my life, just after the summer, or just during the summer. The summer really just changed my life for the better. Traveling and learning more about mental health and how we react to things and being more mindful really changed everything for me. And so I just felt like after a while I became just a normal person going out about their lives. Not too much anxiety. I don't believe that I've had a panic attack like I used to have for a few years now. I do have sometimes moments where the anxiety kind of rises up, but it's never to that point where it was like before. And there's definitely still moments where I do get stressed out, and it feels like it's just the normal people things stress about, like work or schoolwork or trying to balance life. And it just seems like something that each of us goes through. When we go to school or we go into college, we're thinking about balancing this course load, studying along with working, possible tuition money. And so it's interesting to see how that just becomes, normal stress, or what society deems as normal. But I feel like I'm able to function on a daily basis in a way where I'm not doing things that are, abnormal. These compulsions that I used to do, spending like 5 minutes washing my hands, doing it over and over again. I remember those days. And though that was horrible, especially during the winter, I remember before I would have to leave the house, I would check the light switch. How many times would I check the light switch? How many times would I check the tile, making sure that, nothing was dangerous? I remember when I couldn't eat peanut butter because I was worried about contaminating other people. I remember when I couldn't even touch raw meat. And so, well, that left out a lot of food that I actually like because, I'm into cooking now. I remember when I was afraid of knives too, and touching them, meant I was this crazy serial killer. you know, a lot of these compulsions really affected the way I lived my life. So I couldn't do a lot of things that normal people could do. I couldn't cook. I couldn't wash my hands like a regular person. I couldn't leave the house without having to check the stove, the carpet, making sure things aren't going to fall down and hurt somebody. This obsessive reality of worrying about what if this happens and you hurt somebody, and oh my goodness. And it really controls your entire life, and so you can't really do a lot of things that normal people do on their daily lives. And so now that I'm past this obsessive compulsive state of mind, not that I don't have anxiety in some ways still, maybe a little bit of social anxiety, kind of hesitant to maybe speak to strangers, or maybe also talk to people, in some situations. But I think it's almost to the point where it's just this normal kind of idea where, I mean, we notice it now that people are hesitant to talk to each other because they're so obsessed with their phones. You can just go out in public. I don't know where you are, but more than likely you'll see people just walking around looking at their phones and not interacting with anybody. You'll see that in classes where people don't raise their hand. And so that's just a normal thing now. But is it really normal or positive in the long term, right? We don't communicate with each other, and then we don't participate and share our ideas, by raising our hands and really getting active in the classroom. But I think the reality is, like, these are the so-called normal stressors of daily life, other people. And so, how to balance, the desires, right? As a young guy, right? how to balance those certain desires for for women, and trying to maintain the path of just focusing on success, and how to stay faithful to this idea of being successful, because I think that's something that everybody deals with, this idea of like, man, how am I going to make it, how am I going to get a job, and so I think there's a lot of positivity and optimism that I am going to make it. I do believe it. And so that is something that I'm not too worried about. I guess it's just not if, it's when. When am I going to run into that, or when am I going to get there? And so I think it's all about the journey, and it's something that I dealt with in terms of anxiety, where I didn't really step up to the plate a lot in life, and think about long-term goals. And so with this anxiety journey that I went on before, I was thinking about this long-term effect of what this would mean for my life, and it was tricky at times, right? Even with NoFap, where it was like, man, if I give this up, what's going to be the benefit in the long term? And so, through hard work and through persistence, I was able to get to a point where it's like, oh, I can't believe I made it. And so that's the thing that I'm thinking about with success is, I'm trying to focus on success, trying to focus on school and getting the degree, trying to focus on, just these goals, right? Attaining, I guess, attaining wealth in a way, rather than focusing on, going on dates and all these girls here. I do realize that, that in today's world, in order to be successful, you kind of have to work. There's going to be women in the professional environment, so you're gonna have to work with what you got, and so. But the cool thing is just this idea of almost being a normal person, but then realizing that what's normal is not always the best thing. Like, you go on the bus, right? And nobody's talking with each other. Majority of people, are on their phones, or they're. I know myself. I usually do puzzles and to pass the time. But this reality is we could be communicating with different people and learning about them, or let's say we another example could be how we react to things, right? And so, I started to notice this myself is when I cross the street and somebody just zooms in and, cuts right in front of me as I'm crossing the sidewalk. The kind of anger, like, man, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Just this kind of general idea of, like, getting upset at people, but, like, does it really matter? If I didn't get run over, I guess I should be grateful. But kind of this, road rage, which is people do, because they get angry at people, like, come on, man, don't crossing, red light, or cutting somebody off, or honking at people, all these kind of stressors in normal life, right? Because people do the commute, they do traffic, and so these are normal stressors that are in daily life. Or, for example, before I used to get agitated, you go on the bus and there's, people with crying babies. And, when I was younger, I did get agitated by that, because it does get kind of annoying. Just, when you hear crying babies, you're like, oh my goodness, why? But, that's a normal stressor, right? Because there are a lot of babies out there, a lot of, crying, and they're just trying to get used to the world around them. And so it's all about how you react to that, right? That's a normal stressor that you're going to encounter in daily life. So daily life has its own normal stressors that, we just kind of think about. We don't think about it too much, right? We don't think about a thought came up. Sometimes, people walk their dogs, right? And they don't pick up after the dogs. And what does it feel like to step in that, or step in a piece of gum? And that's just on a sidewalk, right? That's something normal that you're going to run into. And depending on where you live, you might run into certain people that are not all that there, right? They're not. They're beyond anxiety and depression. They're kind of in a state of mind that's, they might be imagining things that aren't there, or imagining voices that aren't there, and you might run into those type of people, right? In public, and that could be a stressor as well, because you're like, how is this person going to react? Are they gonna all of a sudden just lose their minds? Or it could be something like, someone smoking a cigarette or vaping, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to breathe that in. And that's just another stressor that's out there in normal life. 'Cause when we walk out that door, there's a whole bunch of people we're interacting with, right? There's so many things happening all at once. So it's like, how are we going to react to that? How are we going to react to those stressors that are trying to get at you, right? They're trying to be like, they're trying to nudge you, like to get irritated. And that's something I started to notice, like after those big compulsions, right? With nofap and with the thoughts in my head, and or these compulsions that I had. Those took so much portion of my life. Now that I don't have those, it's just focusing on these normal stressors, right? The balancing priorities, thinking about how I'm going to do my homework, how am I going to break that down, thinking about studying for class, thinking about how do I still want to do volunteer work while I'm in school, or just the kind of small stressors that happen, right? Somebody somebody has negativity, right, and they're trying to, and that negative emotions trying to come towards you, or a whole list of things just that happen in our daily lives that kind of build on us, right? They try to bring us down, but we have to be aware of them. And I have to be aware of them as well, because I'm starting to I feel like in some way I'm just starting to just become like everybody else. Just a normal person, with just the regular stressor stuff that I can actually relate to people with. So that's just an interesting thought I had in the past couple weeks, past couple months. And I hope you guys took something from that. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.